Hey! Sorry, I was just doing some homework. I have a really important history paper due in a little while, so I figured I'd get a head start on it now, finish it incomplete, and then patch it later to get a good grade. I am a genius, because it's just like the games industry. We keep buying broken and unfinished games over and over again, so why can't my professor take an unfinished paper? How did she grade it before I even turned it in?
What happened to the video game industry? 10 years ago, you'd buy a video game, you'd take it home, you'd play it, and it'd be finished. For the most part, but back in the day, at least pretty much any title you'd pick up would give you a substantial amount of content. Nowadays, it seems like everything is either half-assed and buggy, doesn't feature enough content, or is a mixture of both. And considering the fact that both Sony and Microsoft seem to think that their video games are worth $70 nowadays, I just want to know when we're going to be able to have finished experiences on day one. I understand the current era of development is incredibly different than it was 20 years ago. Things are taken a lot more seriously in this industry, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. But despite the absurd amount of advertisement costs that publishers like to pump into video games, half the time they're half-baked experiences. Pokemon Violet. Jesus Christ. This is the highest grossing multimedia franchise on the planet. Can you tell? Frame rates that drop to the single digits, tons of collision issues, and the lighting engine just straight up not working at times. And how much did this game make? I'm convinced that Game Freak is a drug empire and Pokemon is just their front. But DanRock, those are just glitches and performance issues. Those could be remedied by a future Switch model and firmware updates. Yes, I understand that. But Nintendo is also guilty of releasing games that just straight up don't have enough content in them. For example, Nintendo Switch Sports. Being a sequel to the wildly successful Wii Sports franchise, you would think that Nintendo would want to up the ante and jam as many sports as possible into this game. Wii Sports Resort had 12 sports in it, so how many does Nintendo Switch Sports have? Maybe it's on a diet? Nah, that's just what Nintendo's been doing this generation, releasing incomplete games and then patching more content in later under the guise of a free update. Thing is though, it didn't start like this. Breath of the Wild and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate were both fully complete experiences when they came out. But then around 2019-2020 is when things began to change. I think around the time that Animal Crossing New Horizons came out is when we noticed a bit of a shift. Super Mario 3D All-Stars then followed suit with having an incredibly lackluster collection of games. Yeah, Mario 64 Sunshine and Galaxy are all good times, but Galaxy was already remade for the Nvidia Shield in China, so that was an easy port. Mario 64 was very basically upscaled and wasn't even in widescreen, and Super Mario Sunshine is Super Mario Sunshine. There's really nothing you can do to save it. $59.99, only available for a limited time, and you have to buy now because next year it won't be on shelves. FOMO at its best, and for an experience that I would argue is lackluster compared to what fans have been able to do on the PC. But here's the thing. Nintendo's not alone here. Pretty much every AAA publisher has released an experience that pales in comparison to their previously released ones on prior generations of hardware. Sonic Origins. Fuck you. It's the mobile phone ports of Sonic 1, 2, and CD finally on console, with the only new attraction being a remake of Sonic 3 in 16:9 widescreen created by Christian Whitehead and Simon Domley. You get some challenge levels. That's it. Hey, remember Sonic Mega Collection on the GameCube, which featured all of the games that I mentioned, plus some extra ones? But Sonic Origins has bonus content, yeah, and so did Sonic Mega Collection. And to rub salt in the wound, they ported Sonic Mega Collection to the PC, PS2, and Xbox, and included even more games just a couple years later. Yes, I know that Sonic Origins are ground-up remakes of these games. I totally understand why the value for Sega is there. But for the regular consumer, they're not going to understand the fact that Sonic 1 is different on this collection than it was in Mega Collection, or any of the countless other Sega collections that also included Sonic 1 and or Sonic 2. But hey, I pissed off Mario fans and I pissed off Sonic fans. Why not piss off Call of Duty fans?
I am certified.
Modern Warfare 2 has like 8 maps, and it launched with the worst multiplayer experience I've ever had in a Call of Duty game. I physically could not play with my friends for the absolute longest time because the game would constantly crash whenever I would try to join a lobby. This was eventually patched, only for the newest update to completely break it again. And I know this is going to be subjective, but I personally don't feel like the quality of Modern Warfare 2 is anything like Modern Warfare 1 was in 2019. Activision released an open beta a couple months back to let players run around in the game world and see what they can break and what suggestions they can take to make the game better when it finally does release, but it doesn't feel like a single one of those suggestions was actually heard. And the user interface is the worst part. It feels like I'm using a touchscreen interface with a mouse and keyboard and feels incredibly clunky. This is probably because I'm using a touchscreen interface with a mouse and keyboard and it feels incredibly fucking clunky.
A cell phone interface in a console Call of Duty game. Yeah, throw away your PlayStations, boys. What I really want is to be called a racial slur while I'm riding the bus.
So when did this whole fad begin, this era of releasing incomplete games and then patching them later? Well, I can't say for certain. I do think the rise of live service games have something to do with it. Now, I'm not trying to shit on Fortnite here. I do like Fortnite. I've pumped hundreds of hours into it and probably hundreds of dollars at this point. But let's quickly talk about the history of Fortnite. Fortnite wasn't originally a battle royale. I feel like a lot of people don't realize that. It was a tower defense game that absolutely nobody bought, which is why, yup. In 2017, when Epic Games released Fortnite Battle Royale, things started to change slightly. Of course, an uptick in player count, that is to be expected, but Epic Games also started seeing a lot more revenue being spent in Fortnite. I mean, hell, they were able to make Fortnite Battle Royale completely free and patch things in the future through piecemeal updates. And I feel like a lot of publishers looked at the latter half of that and thought that they could do that too. Of course, forgetting the free part and doing piecemeal updates for full price $60 games, or I guess $70 nowadays. The best example I could give for this is Star Wars Battlefront 2, which also came out in 2017. Not only did it lock a ton of content behind microtransactions and random loot boxes, but also a ton of content just straight up wasn't there at launch. People dogpiled on this game, however, it still sold well, and that sort of taught the industry that they could get away with this. It doesn't matter how much flack they get, they're still gonna get a paycheck at the end of the day. After all, there is a saying that goes, there's no such thing as bad publicity. After all, our consoles are connected to the internet 24/7, so there's no harm in downloading a little patch here and there, and hey, maybe let the gamer download a day one patch too, just to iron out some of the bugs we didn't have time to fix, and then maybe we can patch in stuff in the future. It's a slippery slope, but not all games are like this. Case in point, the indie scene. There's a reason Silksong has taken so long to come out. They want to have a finished product of good quality for gamers to play at launch. A lot of indie developers don't see video games as a means to an end for a paycheck. They see it as an art form, a beautiful storytelling medium for them to dump their passion and love into. Most indie games of any budget and any reputation, even those that have been picked up by major AAA studios nowadays, still have a familiar air of passion to them that a lot of AAA games just can't emulate. And although they may be buggy at times, they do feel a lot more complete than some of the games that are being released by EA, Activision, or Ubisoft nowadays. I pray that if the video game industry can learn something from scrappy little Fortnite, maybe it can learn something from the indie scene as well. We can only hope. I am so tired, but at least I finished my paper. This is all I've got. I just got a cease and desist from Activision. They're claiming that my essay stole the source code from the new Call of Duty game. Says a lot.